Welcome to Turning the Page, a Lexington Public Library podcast. I'm Mariam Adarat.
And I'm Erin West. If you love the library because of books, the programs, and the people behind both, then this is the podcast for you.
And even if you don't, there's still fun to be had. We will bring you the latest book releases that are worth checking out, figuratively and literally.
And we will discuss all of the happenings at the library to look out for.
And of course, what would a library podcast be without a special guest? We will get to know some special authors that are making an impact on our local literary scene.
Whether you're listening to us in your car while washing dishes or snuggled up with a warm drink, we are grateful for your time and hope you enjoy.
Our guest today is an award-winning middle grade and YA novelist. Mariama J. Lockington has been telling stories and making her own books since the second grade. Mariama's middle grade debut for Black Girls Like Me earned 5-starred reviews and was a Today Show Best Kids Book of 2019. Her second book, The Key of Us, earned a Stonewall Honor Award and was featured in the New York Times. Her debut young adult novel, Forever Is Now, is the 2024 winner of the Schneider Family Teen Book Award. Mariam's fourth book, I've Got My Love to Keep Me Warm, is forthcoming in October. Mariama's poetry has appeared in a number of magazines and journals, including BuzzFeed, Newsreader, Bodega Magazine, and Prelude Magazine, and she is the author of the poetry chapbook, The Lucky Daughter. She is a Breadloaf Writers Conference alum, the Voices of Our Nation's Arts alum, a literary deathmatch champion, and she holds a master's in education from Lesley University and a master's in fine arts and poetry from San Francisco State University. Welcome to the podcast, Mariama. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So your website describes yourself as your writing journey starting in the second grade. So take us back to second grade Mariama and tell us about what inspired you to start writing.
Yeah, I love this question. So I grew up in a musical family. I grew up with parents who are classical musicians. So the arts were always highly encouraged. And I was just that kid, annoyingly, who's always wanted to write a book and be an author. Uh-huh. And so I would put together, pieces of cardboard and paper. And before I had words, I would make comics and draw stories out. I was a very imaginative kid, like to go outside and play make-believe. And so, when I got my first book actually published, I went through this box of, old things, and I found a book that I had made that said Mariama's book, roughly around that time. And so it's been a lifelong dream of mine. I love storytelling. I love reading. And, so I've always been telling stories. I had a very Harriet the Spy era in fifth grade where I had a red raincoat and binoculars and I'd sit up in a tree spying on people in the neighborhood. But the practice of music, of learning that sort of discipline helped me with the practice of writing, and eventually, as I got older, led me to really hone in on the craft of writing and knowing that was sort of the art form that I wanted to follow.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I was constantly get me another notebook, and get me some crowns and
did you
pens.
always have that urge to share that writing with the world? I know some writers, they write but for themselves at first, and they are kind of scared to, it's like their baby, to kind of let it out into the world for fear of judgment. Did you ever have that in your writing journey?
I did. I think one of the reasons I started writing, I started journaling first and foremost, and then within my journal were stories and poems and different things. But I also am an adoptee, and so I was separated from my family of origin at birth and then adopted when I was 3 weeks old, and my parents are white and I am a Black person. And so I grew up in this multiracial family with parents who definitely gave me love but also didn't always understand my experience as a young Black girl growing up in the 1900s, in the 80s and 90s. And I started really writing poetry, beyond stories, because I had a lot of questions about who I was and where I came from, and some of the grief that I felt about losing that connection to a biological first family. Yeah. And so I did start writing kind of just to put my words on the page and write things down that I didn't really feel comfortable always going to the adults in my life about. And then I think as I got older, I discovered spoken word and slam poetry. And that's where I got the courage to actually get up on a microphone
And
say out loud some of the things that had been, marinating in my journals and diaries over the years.
Where did you grow up? Were you here in Kentucky or?
No, I grew up all over the place. So the short answer is that when I was in 8th grade, we landed in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so I spent formative years there, and I went to college in Michigan. But before then, we moved around a lot. My parents, specifically my dad, would get new jobs with different orchestras. So I've lived in New Mexico and Baltimore, Maryland, New York City for a brief time, Denver, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. And then we moved to Michigan when I was right after 8th grade. Yeah. So I say that I'm from a lot of different places. And now I call Kentucky home.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. So you talked about your experience being an adoptee by a white family. Your debut novel, For Black Girls Like Me, tells the story of a young Black girl that is adopted by a white family. Is it hard to navigate storytelling that is autobiographical, but lack of a better word, while allowing that main character, Makeda, is that how you pronounce the name?
Makeda.
Makeda, to kind of grow into her own voice?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That book is, I like to say, inspired by some of the emotional truths of growing up as a Black transracial adoptee. And in some ways, yes, it was hard sometimes to tap into some of the more serious parts of that book, the parts where Makeda is feeling isolated and alone and where she's experiencing racism both outside in the world and then also across her dinner table, unintentionally or intentionally. But really so that book actually started out as a collection of poems. I have a background in poetry. I got my MFA in poetry. And I thought that book was like a collection of kind of abstract poems just with like this girl narrator that kept appearing in these poems that were definitely even more autobiographical than the book that is now on bookshelves. But I ended up talking with an editor who had read an essay of mine about being adopted. And she was like, have you ever thought about writing about your experience, fictionalized, but for like a middle grade audience?
Yeah.
And I'm also an educator. I've worked in nonprofit education, and now I work in higher education for many years. And for some reason, it had never occurred to me that I could write for young people. Yeah. So when that happened, I actually got really excited because I had this manuscript of maybe 60 poems about a nameless girl around 11 years old. And I took that poetry manuscript and I thought about plot and character development and who Makeda was as a character, not just like a voice in these poems. And that was actually a really fun, generative puzzle for me to figure out how to transform what I thought was a poetry collection into a middle grade novel.
Yeah.
That definitely spoke to some of the things that I experienced growing up, but then took on a whole other life. And Makeda is a version of me that's maybe a little bit more courageous and bold than I was at that age. But I wrote the book I felt like I needed to read when I was that age and couldn't find on bookshelves.
Yeah. I also love a lot of the middle grade books, or at least that my daughters read when they were younger. There's one that's called Inside Out. I think it's called Inside Out, Back Again. It's written in prose.
Yes.
And then Kareem Between, National Prize Award winner, that's written in prose. So mixing poetry and novels, I think, is a good grab for young readers. So your poetry is still, even though it is a middle grade novel, your poetry is still very evident in your writing.
I don't know how not to do that. My work is pretty hybrid, even when it's marketed as prose. So, yeah.
So as the mother of adult children now of North African descent, there were times that I had found it hard to find books that I felt reflected their lived experience as girls of North African and Middle Eastern descent when they were young. But these days, diverse voices and books are very popular, and they're growing in number. Do you find that publishers are responding to that demand from their customer base for their young readers to have diverse books? Or do you see there's still a gap to fill?
I think we're doing better than we were doing when I was a young person,
Definitely.
Maybe when your children were younger. And I absolutely love in my own reading life to read young adult and middle grade now because there is such a breadth of identities and characters. And also, I might be biased, but I just think there's really good writing happening in the middle grade and young adult space. And so, yes, in some ways, I think there's a lot more sort of representation on bookshelves of all kinds of mental health representation, disability representation of different identities and cultures and races. But I do think we still have a ways to go.
Yes.
And, I'm thinking of a graphic that I sometimes show out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. There's like a children's book council. And they put out some statistics about like the amount of books written about that either have a white character or an animal who's a character. And those books being published are still 2 times as much as any other type of book. And so I think there's still room for improvement. And I think also in this age of, censorship, and we have to be really brave and mindful about writing life-affirming stories and publishing them, because in my experience, when I get to interact with young readers, go to schools, do book clubs, go to libraries, students are really, really craving stories in which they see themselves either directly reflected or they see some universal experience or identity reflected.
Definitely. I think having diverse books definitely helps with especially reluctant readers. You'll find many reluctant readers not necessarily wanting to read because they don't see themselves in the books, or they don't see their friends in the books either, to tell their story. So you said that in your professional life, you're an educator. How has your work as an educator informed your writing?
I think that it has helped me stay connected to young people now. Of course, I remember being a young person, middle school, beginning of high school was a very formative time. I have a lot of memories, good and bad, from that time. But I think that the lovely thing about being an educator and getting to be in spaces with students who are in middle school and high school is that I just get to listen to them talk to each other or to me. And that helps me with dialogue. It helps me sometimes with slang, although, that could be tricky based on where you are in the country. But it also just helps me stay connected to what young people care about right now and what they're facing and the amount of just all of the things that they're holding. Young people are holding so much, and they're so much more intuitive and innovative than we sometimes give young people credit for. I've never been a classroom teacher, but I've always worked to support classroom teachers or worked in after-school programs. Now I work for a college of education. And so I run our spelling bee. I help out with our STEM camps and all this stuff. That's really brings me a lot of joy. But yeah, I love to just ear hustle and listen to what kids are saying to each other. And actually, when I was writing and revising for Black Girls Like Me, my first book, I was a coach for a program called Girls on the Run, where you work with a group of girls and you train for a 5K. And there's a whole curriculum around self-esteem and confidence. And so we'd be running our laps, and I would run to different groups of girls and just check in and listen to them talking. And so I think that really helped me. And I think if you write for young people, you really have to love young people.
Exactly.
Because they're going to see right through sort of any type of facade if you're kind of faking it. And they will put you in the hot seat immediately. Doesn't matter who you are about your life.
Yeah, we actually participated in the Girls on the Run with my daughters. It's a great program for their self-esteem and motivating them. It's a really good program. Another way to learn about young people is to carpool.
I bet, yes.
Listening to my son talk to his friends during the carpool to soccer practice or to school. Or it's interesting conversation.
Yeah.
You have to learn not to cross that line where you're just a listener and you don't interject, so that, the trust is
and
still there.
And you're not too cringe. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
So your YA novel, Forever's Now, won the Schneider Family Teen Book Award in 2024. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us about that book and what it was like receiving such an honor.
I still have a hard time absorbing getting that award, but I'm really grateful for it. It was really a lovely surprise. So Forever Is Now was my debut young adult novel for slightly older teens, and I wrote that book kind of out of like a necessity for myself and hoping it would also resonate with others. I started writing it in 2020, I started writing it after Breonna Taylor's death and also beginning of the pandemic. And I was not doing very well mental health-wise just on my own. And so the Schneider Family Book Award is an award given to a middle grade picture and young adult books that depict disability in some way, disability mental health awareness. And so it was really lovely and validating to get that award because there's an author note in the back of the book where I talk about where I was mentally when I was writing the book and also the urgency I felt to write Sadie's story. And the book is about a girl who is a poet, an activist. She loves where she lives in her community, but she also lives with chronic anxiety. And the book is about a time when her anxiety gets so bad that she can't resume her normal routines and function, and is later diagnosed with something called agoraphobia, which is a panic disorder. And so it's about her getting back to her joy. It's about her leaning on her community and also figuring out how to be a young person who deeply cares about the world, the earth, her people, and wants to be out there maybe marching in the streets, but then physically and mentally is not able to. So how do you show up for the people you love, the communities you love, when you yourself are also struggling, learning, and growing? And so that book came out of that, and it was really lovely to get that validation of that award because mental health is such a huge issue in all communities, including the Black community.
A young person in my life that read that book gave such a good perspective about that. She talked about how activism can take different faces.
Yes.
You don't necessarily have to be the loud and, upfront person to be an activist. There are different ways to become an activist so that you're not sacrificing your own mental health.
Yeah.
And that's what she got out of that. So it's lovely for your writing to be reaching young people like that is amazing. So you have a book coming out in October of this year called I've Got My Love to Keep Me Warm. Can you share some insights about that book and what your fans have to look forward to?
Yes, I haven't got to talk about this book much yet. It does come out October 14th. It is another young adult novel. And it is a dual perspective. One girl's voice is written in prose and one is written in poems. And it's basically my attempt to write a Hallmark-esque holiday LGBTQ romance with the sort of same issues that I always cover in my books as far as like finding joy and voice and taking care of mental health and family. But yeah, it's about two opposite attract type girls who sort of start fake dating. One of them is an influencer, a beauty influencer. The other is like very naturey and outdoorsy, but they start fake dating for basically the sponsorships and clicks on the influencer's page. And
I love it.
As things go, things get a little bit muddled. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing a love story, a romance story about two very different young people who are trying to find out their way in the world. One of them is planning to be a cosmetologist, and the other is trying to figure out what she wants to do and take a gap year, and each one is struggling with their own identities, but ultimately they end up coming together and finding ways to support and learn and love each other. And so I'm excited about it. I hope it's cozy and fun in addition to all the other things.
We can't wait to hear more about it and hope to have you at the library once that book is
I would love to
on
visit,
the podcast.
yes.
Love it, love it, love it. Out of all the books that you've written or even your poetry, which this is kind of like asking you to pick your favorite child, isn't it? But I'm going to do it anyway. Which one was, let's say, changed you or brought you the most joy?
That's so hard. I'll answer it this way. I think the one that I was most pleasantly surprised about, bringing me even more joy after it was published, was In the Key of Us, which is my second book. And I loved writing this book. It's about two Black girls who go to a predominantly white music camp. One's a flute player, one's a trumpet player. And they get off on the wrong foot and then eventually come together. And I wanted to just write like a fun camp story about Black girls who get to be in nature and are passionate about the arts. And I guess I just wasn't sure if it would connect or reach with people, but I've had so many lovely interactions with both young people and their families who said they've read that book together and that they have kids who are musicians or in band or go to some type of camp, and that they love the cast of characters. And so I think that one has brought me a lot of joy after it was published, as far as it's gone, the reach that it's gotten.
Yes.
And the way that different kids are able to connect to it, even if they're not like the main characters.
And that one won a Stonewall
Honor Award. Yes, it won a Stonewall
Wow.
Honor Award. But it's been fun to see how the different books take on lives after they're published, because that's sort of at the point you got to let it go and see what happens.
Exactly. And what a treasure. And how lucky are we to have you live in this community and be able to have you on this podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you so
for
much.
visiting us and chatting with us and having our listeners enjoy your work as well. So
Anytime. This was great. Thank you.
thank you, Mariama. That was a good conversation with Mariama. I'm really happy that we got to have her on the podcast.
Yes, it was. I really enjoyed hearing her answers to your questions.
Yeah, she's one of those people that you really just enjoy just having a chat with and getting a different perspective on things. So it was really lovely.
I feel like we could have chatted for an hour.
Exactly. But yeah, her books are geared towards middle grade folks. I think she would do well in writing a book for adults. That was actually something I should have asked her.
You should have, because
Yeah.
I feel like the themes that she explores are applicable across the ages. And
Yeah. All right. Some books that have come across my desk, and one I've actually read all the way through, one I just started reading. So the first one is called The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mukhtar. She co-authored the award-winning book, This Is How You Lose the Time War, with Max Gladstone.
Okay, yeah.
This is her first debut novel that she wrote on her own. Yeah. And it's a novella. I'm on a novella kick because I can get through them very quickly.
For if you're busy but you don't want to give up your reading, because if you stop, it's really hard to
get back into it. Yes,
again. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is her first book, which is a novella. Like I said, it's one that kind of veers away from what I normally read. So it's very much a fairy tale fantasy world, a themed genre. It starts off on this incredible description of this town. It's called Thistleford, which is where the Hawthorne family live, and it's the two sisters, Esther and Isabel. So the book's description reads, in the small town of Thistleford on the edge of Fairy dwells the mysterious Hawthorne family. There they tend and harvest the enchanted willows and honor an ancient compact to sing to them in thanks for their magic. None more devotedly than the family's latest daughters, Esther and Isabel, who cherish each other as much as they cherish the ancient trees. But when Esther rejects a forceful suitor in favor of a lover from the land of Fairy, not only the sisters bond, but also their lives will be at risk. So although there are some elements of romance in the book, the story of the sisters is probably, for me, what kind of floats to the top. It's more about the sisterly love that exists between Esther and Isabel. And she's very protective of her sister, and kind of, I think that relationship is the theme of the book. Isabel is in danger, so Esther kind of takes it upon herself to rescue her. So this one was released on March 4th. And is available for checkout on ebook and print book.
I'm gonna have to check that one out because
I think you would enjoy it.
It's right up my alley.
Yeah. So it's kind of like Elsa and Anna, but for adult audiences.
Yeah,
with darker themes.
Yes, and I love that it's fairies are just kind of a timeless. Almost a pun. I don't know.
Yeah.
So the theme of it's nice to see something other than just I'm in love with the fairy.
Exactly.
I'm going to help my sister. I'm going to protect my sister. And then fairies are just also around. So.
Exactly. And there is elements of romance.
Yeah.
But it's not the primary. The second book that I am currently reading is called The Story She Left Behind by Patty Callahan Henry. She's a popular author. She wrote The Secret Book of Flora Lee, and that was an award-winning popular book picked for a lot of book clubs, etc. But this one's coming out March 18th, and it was inspired by a true literary mystery. So it's kind of based on true events.
Cool.
So it's 1927. 8-year-old Clara Harrington's magical childhood shatters when her mother, renowned author Bronwyn Newcastle Fordham, disappears off the coast of South Carolina. Bronwyn stunned the world with a book written in an invented language. So her mom kind of invented this language, and she released a book in the language. And it became like a national sensation when she was just 12 years old. So her departure leaves behind not only a devoted husband and heartbroken daughter, but also the hope of ever translating the sequel for her landmark work. And so the story takes off in 1952. So Clara, the daughter, has grown up and she becomes an illustrator. And she has a daughter, Winnie. So when a stranger named Charlie Jameson contacts her from London claiming to have discovered a handwritten dictionary of her mother's lost language, Clara is skeptical because her mom's the one that created this language. So how can there be a dictionary about it? Compelled by the tragedy of her mother's vanishing, she goes to London. And during that time, one of the most deadliest natural disasters happens. It's the Great Smog of London. So if you've never heard of it, just go ahead and search it. It was pretty devastating. So with asthmatic Winnie in peril, they escape the city with Charlie and find refuge in the Jamesons' family retreat in the Lake District. And then Clara has to find the courage to uncover the truth about her mother and the story that she left behind. So it was really good. Patty Callahan is very lyrical. She has this prose about her that is evident in her previous work. So far, I've enjoyed it. It's very, it grips you from the first chapter. So
that's awesome.
And I love stories about mother and daughter relationships.
Yeah.
I think are really, and I love stories about sisters too. As a mom of girls and having 3 sisters, so I love it. So those are my picks today this week.
And so we have something coming up in April.
Yes. So
do you want to tell us about it?
In April, we are having our big community reads for 2025.
Yay!
And that book is Happiness Falls by Angie Kim.
Yay!
So the announcement would have been made by the time this podcast comes out. So
this isn't a spoiler.
So I'm so excited for our community to read this book. It's an amazing book by Angie Kim. She wrote The Miracle Creek. So she's a very prolific writer. I love even hearing her speak. She's very eloquent. So the book, Happiness Falls, it's told from the perspective of a 20-year-old girl, Mia. So she's sort of this hyper-analytical girl in part of the family. It's set during the pandemic, so she's at home with her family. She's got 2 brothers. Her younger brother has Engelman's syndrome, so he's nonverbal. Her father and her younger brother go out on a walk. They don't come back, and they're kind of late coming home. Yeah. And then her younger brother, Eugene, comes home alone with a bloody shirt.
Oh,
her father has disappeared.
Yeah.
So the story kind of takes you on this journey of trying to find out what happened to the dad, because the only witness is Eugene, who is nonverbal, so he can't say anything. During that journey, secrets are all revealed. They kind of realize that they don't really know their dad very well, and it kind of delves into the struggles her mom, who is South Korean American, the struggles that she went through as she came to America, learning a new language. So the biggest theme of the book is about language and barriers when you can't speak or can't, relay the information that you want to people, and how language, when you speak differently, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're an idiot or that you're not intelligent. So that's one of the biggest themes. Another theme is family life and how much do you really know your family members and the way that family members communicate. So it's a mystery, but it's also very moving, lots of philosophical themes that we can discuss. So I look forward to seeing our customers at one of our very many book discussions. So we're going to
be a great time.
It is.
Y'all are going to love this book.
Yeah, so it's really, really good. We're going to have 6 in-house book clubs, and then our community members, if they have a book club that they want to use this book for, we're going to have kits available for checkout and 15 books to pass out to their members. So be on the lookout. Pop into one of the branches to pick up your book club kit. Each branch is going to have 2 kits, and then there's also going to be library-hosted book discussions with a lot of other programming. There's going to be, of course, May is when the actual community reads is going to be happening, but I wanted to get the books out before then so people have the chance to actually read the book before they participate in the discussion group. So this is all happening in May, which is AAPI month. And that's why I wanted to choose an author from Asian descent. So Angie Kim is South Korean American. And the mother, the character in the book, is South Korean. So it's an exciting book, and I think everybody will love it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about what's happening in April. We're going to have the 250 Lex Literary Celebration, an evening inspired by the written word. And that is actually at the Kentucky Theater, but it is library sponsored. It's Tuesday, April 8th from 6:30 to 9. Yeah. And it's completely free. And it's just a celebration of Lexington's literary heritage featuring local authors, performers, and poet laureates.
Yes. And I'm excited about that event because I helped plan it. There's going to be all kinds of local authors.
Can you give us some hints of who might be there?
So Nikki Finney is going to be there. Crystal Wilkinson, Silas House is going to be there. Danny Quintos is going to be reading. So we've got multiple readings happening. So the information is on our website, and then the Carnegie Center will also have information on their website, and then our Facebook group. If you like us on Facebook and Instagram, all that information will be there. There's also going to be a musical performance by one of our own, Tony Wavy and his group. So I'm really, really excited. So it showcases all kinds of literary elements throughout the evening.
That sounds like a wonderful event. Marksbury Family Branch is going to have a program called It Is Written on Wednesday, April 23rd from 5 to 6:30. And it's on the first floor Paseo, which is the beautiful open area. When you come in the branch, you just go all the way back. There's big windows and comfy places to sit. And it's going to celebrate Lexington's talent with live performances from local musicians and poets. And the pieces will be inspired by Lexington and celebrate Lexington history and culture for the 250 Lex celebration.
That one is really exciting, too. That one's going to be done at 3 different locations. So Marksbury, Northside, and Tates Creek. So you could come to all of them, or you can just go to one. And it's going to be over 3 different weekends. So it gives people the opportunity to come. If they can't come to one, they can join another one. And that one's going to be really cool, too. And then we have Nikki Finney is doing her own program here at Northside, April 9th at 5 o'clock. And that's just going to be like an in conversation, kind of an intimate evening with Nikki Finney. She's going to talk about her work and her journey as a writer and poet and what she's been up to since she moved to South Carolina. So I'm really excited to meet her and get to talk to her. So keep a lookout on that.
And then we also have an afternoon with Wes Blake and Rick Childers. And Wes Blake was our guest here. And he was a wonderful guest. So you can come and visit with 2 authors, Wes Blake and Rick Childers, and they'll talk about their careers and do a reading from their books, and they'll answer questions. Yeah. And that's on Sunday, April 13th from 2 to 3 at Beaumont Branch.
We have a literary treasures here in Lexington.
We do.
Very lucky.
We are very fortunate to have the literary community that we do. And I want to talk about a couple of the book clubs, talk about their picks for April. Eastside Book Club, they meet on April 1st. So I still want to talk about it, miss it with the release. But the Eastside Book Club meets Tuesdays, and it's 5:30 to 6:30 at Eastside. And they're going to be talking about Passing by Nella Larson. The mystery community is Northside's Mystery Book Club, and that meets on Thursday, April 3rd from 6 to 7. And this month's pick is A Talent for Murder by Peter Swanson. And then the Check Me Out Book Club meets at the Lexington Humane Society, and that is Thursday, April 17th at 6, and they're going to be discussing Wes Blake's book, Pineville Trace. Hooked on Books this month is Beaumont's book club that lets you choose whatever book you like on the theme, and this month's theme is survival stories, and that's going to meet Saturday, April 19th at 3.
That's an interesting concept. Like everybody reads their own book selection, but with a specific theme, and they talk about their own books. So that is such a good idea. I love it.
Finally, we have the Cult Classics Book Club that meets at West 6 Brewing. It's Wednesday, April 23rd from 6 to 7, and this month they'll be discussing The Secret History by Donna Tartt.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into Turning the Page. If you enjoyed listening, there will be more to come, so please give us a follow so that you don't miss the next episode.
We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.